Life matters. Democrats on Capitol Hill seek to make it easier for women to get an abortion. Quad Leaders Summit. President Joe Biden welcomes the prime ministers of India, Japan, and Australia to the White House. Coronavirus crisis. The Biden administration makes more Americans eligible for a booster shot. And border disorder. Migrants overwhelm a small Texas town, where the situation stands tonight. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, September 24th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The U.S. House of Representatives passed the most sweeping pro-abortion bill in the nation's history today. By a vote of 218 to 211, lawmakers adopted the Women's Health Protection Act. It now moves on to the Senate, where Republicans may have the votes to block it. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more.
Pro-lifers, including the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, strongly oppose this bill, calling it abortion on demand. It also weakens conscious rights and blocks states from taking any action to limit abortions in the future.
On this vote, the yeas are 218, the nays are 211. The bill is passed without objection. A motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Representative Henry Cuellar, a Catholic, was the only Democrat to vote nay. Before debate began, the bill's sponsor, Democrat Judy Chu, hailed the legislation.
Congress must protect the rights of women and pregnant people in every zip code, putting an end to an attack on abortion once and for all. The Women's Health Protection Act is how we do that.
During debate, emotions ran high.
Look and see the mysteries of the mother's womb. Open your ears to the cries of the unborn. May hearts break, and may we celebrate life. Let's uphold the value, the dignity, and the potential of every life.
It is the Constitution that gives people the right to make a decision about abortion with their families, their doctor, and in accordance with their faith.
Catholic Congressman David Schweikert, who was adopted, shared about the moment he first met his birth mother.
She was struggling. You could hear her almost hyperventilating. I pray for you every morning. Are you okay? Are you healthy? Are you happy? And I'm crying on my side saying, I have a great life. Thank you for letting me live.
March for Life President Jeannie Mancini says by adopting the bill, quote, the United States will soon be indistinguishable from North Korea and China on the human rights issue of abortion. The bill now heads to the Senate, where pro-life groups believe that Democrats don't have the votes, and they hope that Catholics like Joe Manchin and Bob Casey will support life. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Abortion providers in Texas are asking again for the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene in the state's pro-life heartbeat law. Earlier this month, the High Court permitted the Texas law to take effect as other appeals proceed in lower courts. Abortion advocates claim a flight to out-of-state clinics is a crisis. Next Friday, a federal court hears the Justice Department's lawsuit against enforcement of the law. Meanwhile, a different appeals court has held a hearing over Georgia's heartbeat law. A three-judge panel of the 11th U.S. Circuit Court took up the state's appeal today. A federal judge had declared the law unconstitutional last year. And in another pro-life case, Guam's government is appealing an injunction against its telemedicine abortion restriction. Remote access is allowed under a prior settlement, but Guam's law also requires an in-person medical visit to issue a prescription. President Joe Biden says that he understands Americans are frustrated. He responded to reporters after giving a speech on COVID-19 booster shots and before a White House meeting with world leaders from India, Japan, and Australia, an Indo-Pacific alliance known as the Quad. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, in a speech this morning, President Joe Biden implored those now eligible for COVID-19 booster shots to get them. At the same time, blamed unnamed elected officials for undermining the fight against COVID. A first-of-its-kind event. President Joe Biden hosts a Quad Leaders Summit at the White House. He invited the prime ministers of Japan, India, and Australia to discuss everything from cyberspace to climate change.
We're 4 major democracies with a long history of cooperation. We know how to get things done, and we are up to the challenge.
The president also has been meeting individually with each of the prime ministers. A key topic, the response to COVID-19. Earlier in the day, the president talked about immunizations for Americans.
The booster shot is free and easily accessible.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention now endorsing a 3rd dose of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine to people 65 and older, nursing home residents, medically vulnerable adults, and people whose jobs increase their risk of contracting the virus. President Biden also went after the unvaccinated.
And they are causing a lot of damage. The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units.
The White House COVID-19 response team adding,
"We will not boost our way out of this pandemic. Infections among the unvaccinated continue to fuel this pandemic, resulting in a rising number of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths where people are unvaccinated."
While cheering the boosters, the president also said afterwards in a Q&A with reporters, he understands that people are
frustrated by, I thought this was going to be better. I thought everything was working out. We were moving along on COVID-19.
Now, the president also said he's moving forward with vaccination requirements wherever he can. That's drawing plenty of criticism from those who feel getting a shot is better left up for them to decide. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, there are no migrants left under the Rio International Bridge in Texas. That is according to the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
To date, DHS has conducted 17 expulsion flights to Haiti with approximately 2,000 individuals. Those who are not expelled under Title 42 are placed in immigration removal proceedings. Let me take a step back and explain.
Secretary Mayorkas stressed the deportations are due to Title 42, the COVID-19 policy, and not an immigration policy. And joining me now to discuss this is Alfonso Aguilar, president of the Latino Partnership for Conservative Principles. Alfonso, welcome back. Always great to see you. First off, your reaction to Secretary Mayorkas' comments on the situation at the border, specifically Del Rio, and the recent developments there.
Well, it's utter chaos and a crisis that they have created by inviting migrants from all over the world to come to our southern border and facilitating it by liberalizing our asylum system. These people are coming here and they're asking for asylum. He mentioned that thousands have been removed. That is true. But thousands are being detained right now and being processed. And thousands have been detained and dispersed into the U.S. They're giving a notice to appear. And we know that many, thousands, will not appear before court or before immigration officials. So this is terrible. And when this happens, when people see that you can actually come here, that many are allowed to come in and they're dispersed into the country, that is another incentive for many more to come. About 9,000 of the Haitian migrants returned to Mexico, but I can tell you, they're going to be back. The message across the world, because it's not only in the Americas, it's across the globe, sadly, is that America is open. And Secretary Mayorkas has said it again today that the border is closed. He told Congress, House, and Senate that the border is closed, but clearly it is not. And, President Biden keeps saying that he wants to he did away with President Trump's border security measures because he wanted to create a more humane system. But actually, he has made it more inhumane. What's happening at the border, we all saw those images, are terrible. Thousands of people. And these Haitians were not coming from Haiti. They were coming from Brazil, from Chile. This was totally predictable. And sadly, the president is not willing to support the Border Patrol. The Customs and Border Protection is overwhelmed. They don't have the resources. They will never have the resources to receive so many people. In this fiscal year alone, over 1.5 million people have already arrived at the border. They just can't do it. And this president is not willing to support CBP, already attacking, denouncing the Border Patrol officials who were in horseback trying to corral Haitian migrants, a situation out of control, saying that, denouncing them, saying that the images were horrible and that they were somehow mistreating those Haitian migrants, which is not true. This is a very sad situation, and frankly, we have to get it under control.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that. I know that the National Border Patrol Council actually put out a statement the other day saying those claims were really outrageous and they were actually using authorized equipment and techniques. And they also said the administration is solely responsible for the mishandling of this issue since day one. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Well, absolutely. This is standard procedure. Every day we have Border Patrol officers on horseback patrolling the border. Training continues to this day on with horses, to train with horses. They were following standard procedure. Perhaps people were taken aback by the photos, but the administration should have explained, Secretary Mayorkas should have explained the context of those photos to explain that they were not hurting anyone. They were in fact trying to protect those individuals and trying to ensure that the situation, which is already very difficult, doesn't get out of control. But instead of doing that, they immediately started attacking the Border Patrol, saying that, bringing in the issue of racism and systemic racism that has nothing to do with this. It's just very pathetic. And yes, I heard the statements from the Border Patrol syndicate, from the union, and they're very frustrated. They don't see the support from the administration, and frankly, some of them are calling for Secretary Mayorkas to step down. And frankly, when I see this dereliction of duty from the administration, I think Secretary Mayorkas actually does have to step down. He wasn't willing even to tell Congress how many migrants that have arrived to our southern border illegally have been dispersed into our country. And as I've said, we received already over 1.5 million migrants. How many have been detained and released into the country? They can't provide those numbers to Congress. So I'm really, really concerned with the lack of transparency and accountability from Secretary Mayorkas. And, we learned that where is Vice President Kamala Harris? She was given the responsibility to take care of the border crisis. She hasn't been to the border this past few weeks, even though we had a major crisis. And we learned today, or this past days, that President Biden hasn't been to the border at all. So this is a major crisis, and they seem to be ignoring it. It's time to put the resources in place, the measures in place to dissuade people from making this terrible, dangerous trek. It's not about being inhuman. The measures that President Trump put in place, the remaining in Mexico policy, the expanding the wall system, and the agreements that he reached, the safe country agreements he reached with countries in Central America, were all put in place to dissuade people from making this inhumane and very dangerous trek. We have to put those measures in place to ensure that this doesn't continue.
Well, Alfonso, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for weighing in. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, church in Germany. The Holy Father makes a leadership decision. And World Day of Migrants and Refugees. How the Catholic Church is marking the occasion. Well, the Vatican says a German cardinal will remain in his post following an investigation into the handling of sexual abuse cases. Cardinal Rainier Maria Wolke will continue to lead the Archdiocese of Cologne following a break. The Holy See found no evidence that Cardinal Wolke acted unlawfully in relation to abuse claims. The 65-year-old was said to have made other mistakes when dealing with misconduct, including a lack of communication. Last week, Pope Francis met Cardinal Wolke for a long conversation. And for more on the story, including reaction from the Cardinal, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Also in Germany, 3 candidates are competing to succeed Angela Merkel as chancellor. Election day is Sunday. Narrow polls show the center-left Social Democrats ahead of Merkel's center-right Union bloc. The Greens could also retain leverage to form a parliamentary coalition. For more than 100 years, the Catholic Church has celebrated World Day of Migrants and Refugees. The celebration this year takes place on Sunday. The initiative aims at encouraging all Christians to address the issues posed by migration, including viewing refugees as an opportunity to put into practice the values of charity and mercy. EWTN Newsroom correspondent Colm Flynn joins us now. Colm, great to see you. So can you tell us about the Holy Father's theme for this year's World Day of Migrants and Refugees?
Yes, I can, and good evening, Tracy. Well, the Pope has released his message for this year's World Day of Migrants and Refugees, as you said, in the form of a statement and a video message. And in it, Pope Francis says he chose the theme and slogan, "Towards an even wider we." So what does this mean? Well, the Pope said that this coming Sunday, September the 26th, it will be an invitation for us to restore our human family. He poignantly said that we are all like grains of sand, all different, all unique, but together we can form a beautiful beach, a beautiful work of art. The Pope went on to say that we are all in the same boat together and we must do what we can to try and bring down the walls that divide us. He said we must become even more open and welcoming. He stressed that there should be no more others, but instead there should be one we, and we covers all of humanity. Also, Tracy, he talked about his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, where he expressed his concerns that when this pandemic passes, that the world wouldn't fall into what he calls forms of egotistic self-preservation. In other words, he hoped that there would be no more us and them and others, but simply one we, one family, moving towards an even wider we, the theme of this year's World Day of Refugees and Migrants.
And Colm, what more did the Holy Father have to say about the current global pandemic and being linked to the theme that he chose this year?
Well, Tracy, he spoke more deeply with references to the Bible about what the concept of we is and the modern understanding of the word we. He said that the world's understanding of the word today is broken and fragmented. He said it was wounded and disfigured. He said that this had become more evident during the global coronavirus pandemic. He then referred to the we in the Catholic Church, and he said that the idea of we in the Church was crumbling and cracking, in part due to what he called aggressive forms of nationalism and racial individualism. He said we must all aim for a church that is more Catholic, more faithful to being Catholic, and he quoted St. Paul, "There is one body and one spirit." He went on to say that the Church's Catholicity, her universality, must be embraced, and that the Holy Spirit enables us to embrace everyone. He said the current influx of migrants around the world can be seen as a new frontier for mission in the Church, a privileged opportunity to proclaim Jesus Christ. Those were his words.
And before I let you go, can you tell us about the history of World Day of Migrants and Refugees?
I can indeed, Tracy. Briefly, the Church marked the first celebration of the World Day of Migrants and Refugees in 1914 to express support and concern for people who are forced to flee their homes in different parts of the world. It's normally always on the last Sunday of September, and each year the Pope has used it as an opportunity to express concern and his fears for groups of vulnerable people who are on the move. It's an opportunity for the world to pray for them, but it is also an opportunity to raise awareness of their plight and the issues that these people face. And it brings the topic very much back into the headlines. Tracy?
Oh, Colm, thank you so much. Colm Flynn, EWTN Newsroom correspondent. Thanks again.
Thank you, Tracy.
Up next, new shrine. How the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City is drawing inspiration from Blessed Stanley Rother. This week on EWTN News In Depth, hosted by Monse Alvarado, respecting the gifts of the disabled and the inalienable rights of all people. Plus, life-saving surgery, an organization providing heart surgery for children with Down syndrome. That's on EWTN News In Depth, Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with an encore at 11 on Sunday mornings. Well, finally tonight, the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City is building a shrine dedicated to Blessed Stanley Rother, an American priest who gave his life serving his parish and God in Guatemala. The shrine will be 6,000 square feet and will serve as a visible reminder of the church's presence in Oklahoma. It is modeled after Blessed Stanley's church in Guatemala, and there will also be a museum dedicated to sharing his life and mission. Blessed Stanley Rother died in Guatemala back in 1981. And joining us now is Leif Arvidson, Executive Director of the Blessed Stanley Rother Shrine. Leif, welcome. So great to see you. First off, for those who may not be that familiar, can you briefly tell us a little bit more about Blessed Stanley Rother and how he remains relevant today?
Sure. Blessed Stanley was a farm boy from Okarche, Oklahoma, just about a half hour outside of Oklahoma City. After growing up on the farm, he felt the call to the priesthood. He went to seminary in Texas, where he studied greatly with his he struggled greatly with Latin studies and ended up being told that he didn't have the intellectual capacity to continue his seminary studies. So he went back home, but really felt the call to the priesthood. So he ended up going to a different seminary with the blessings of his bishop, Mount St. Mary's out east. He became a priest, and after 5 years serving as a priest, he went as a missionary to Guatemala, where he developed a great love for the people there. And interestingly enough, he was able to master the Mayan dialect of the people who he was serving, the Tutzahil dialect. He ended up being able to offer masses in Tutzahil and help to translate the New Testament into Tutzahil. His people were heavily persecuted there, and the government came down heavily against the Catholic Church in the 70s and into the 80s. And in 1981, various catechists and priests had been being captured and tortured and murdered just for standing up for the Catholic faith and Catholic teachings. And he was put on a hit list, and eventually they came for him, and he gave his life as a martyr for the faith.
Wow, such an incredible story. I want to talk about the shrine now. Can you give us some details about that? You know, how much it cost, how much you were able to raise, and also when it's set to be finished by?
Sure. Well, the Shrine Church itself will be an enormous church. It will be the largest Catholic church in the state of Oklahoma. It will seat almost 2,000 people. And on the shrine grounds, well, in the church, first of all, we'll have a chapel where Blessed Stanley's body will be laid to rest. We'll also have, outside of the church, we'll have a pilgrim center with a museum where the story of Blessed Stanley's life and missionary work is told, and the story of his martyrdom, and then the fruits of his martyrdom, and all the vocations and flourishing of the church in the area where he was martyred. We'll also have an area, we have a lot of Hispanics in that area of Oklahoma City, so we have built a version of Tepeyac Hill, which is the hill in Mexico City where Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared to St. Juan Diego, and we hope to do some fundraising to be able to put a statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe at the top of the hill in St. Juan Diego. But the church itself cost about $22 million, and then some additional funding was needed for the rest of the shrine, and we still need to do some fundraising to complete the project. But for perspective, I think AT&T Stadium, where the Dallas Cowboys play just a few hours south of here, cost over $1 billion. So you could build about 50 of these shrine churches for that cost.
Wow. And before we wrap things up here, Leif, can you give us sort of a quick update on Blessed Stanley's path to sainthood?
Sure. Because of his martyrdom, once it was confirmed that he died for the faith and for the church and for his people, then Pope Francis was able to declare him a blessed. And he was beatified just very recently, just almost 4 years ago to the day, on September 23rd of 2017. And in order for his canonization process to move forward now, a miracle needs to be received by someone. So I encourage your viewers to pray for Blessed Stanley's intercession. And if a miracle is received with no medical reasons why it should have occurred, then Blessed Stanley can be declared a saint.
Well, Leif, thank you so much for your time today and sharing all this with us. We appreciate it. Leif Arvidson, Executive Director of the Blessed Stanley Rother Shrine. Thank you again.
Great, thank you.
And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.